Hey y'all, I'm CQ and this is Spirit Gumbo, the podcast where we stir the spiritual pot with truth, spice, and sass. Today, we're talking about digital energy leaks, how constant connectivity, fear-driven information, and the expectation of 24/7 access quietly drains our nervous systems and pulls us out of alignment. We live in a world where being reachable is treated like responsibility, where silence feels suspicious, and where not engaging can be mistaken for indifference. In this episode, I'm sharing how technology, when used without awareness, can override intuition, fuel anxiety, and fracture our sense of humanity, and how reclaiming digital boundaries can restore regulation and peace. You'll hear a story time called Fear Replaced Intuition. We'll stir in a grounding gumbo bite titled Digital Boundaries, pull a tarot truth bomb to help you check where connectivity may be costing you more than it's giving, and deliver a spirit side-eye titled Scroll On By, because not everything online is meant for you, and not every moment requires your engagement. Time to slow it down, tune back in, and remember that access is not entitlement, because today we're talking about digital awareness and protecting your peace in a world that never stops pinging. So, grab your candle, sip your tea, and let's get into it. This ain't just talk. This is Spirit Gumbo with CQ. All right, now here's your gumbo bite for today. Something short and spicy to stir into your soul. Stay safe together at home. That slogan was meant to foster community health and individual well-being by reducing the spread of illness during the pandemic. And on the surface, it sounded supportive, even comforting for some. For me, however, I heard something else, an oxymoron. I pay attention to language and delivery. I can't tell you how many times I heard that phrase on TV or the radio and instinctively rolled my eyes. Not because I didn't believe people were sick. My own family caught something right before everything escalated and we were told they didn't even know what it was. I rolled my eyes because of the language. Together implies connection, shared space, and human presence. At home means isolation, separation, and physical disconnection. What we were asked to accept was that safety required distance and that community could exist without contact, sustained almost entirely through screens. And in that shift, many of the things community brings, love, comfort, understanding, were quietly diminished. For me, during that space and time, it felt like mental and emotional well-being were being sacrificed in the name of fear. And that's where something in the human experience quietly began to fracture. Now, take that with you and stir wisely. Story time with CQ, when fear replaced intuition. Before I continue, I want to be very clear about something. This is not a political statement of any kind. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This podcast isn't about politics. And this isn't about judging the decisions anyone made for themselves. This story time is about how technology, when used without discernment, can negatively affect the human experience. What I'm sharing here is my perspective and my lived experience. If you feel differently, I respect that. All I ask in return is the same respect, the willingness to listen, even if your experience wasn't the same as mine. I was fortunate that the owner of the shop that I worked at shared some of my views on the lockdowns that were in place at the time. While I didn't openly protest them, I also didn't agree with them. After the initial lockdowns, she quietly reopened the shop, allowing only a few people in at a time, nothing loud, nothing rebellious, just intentional. And what we quickly realized was this: people were missing connection. People needed to feel like they weren't alone. While we, as healers, weren't recognized by those in charge as being essential, our clients told us repeatedly that for their mental health, we absolutely were. We didn't shout it from the rooftops. We just did the work. We kept distance where it was needed. We even masked up when we were asked to. And I want to be clear here. It's not that I don't believe in protective measures. I believe in choice. I believe people should be trusted to make decisions for their own bodies and well-being. What stood out to me most during that time was how much human connection mattered and how easily it was dismissed as non-essential. We saw so many people during that time, so many different perspectives, so many different fears. We held space for those who rebelliously wanted to fight against the lockdowns. We held space for those living in constant fear of losing loved ones, fear of getting sick, fear of being trapped and stuck, fear of everything. And we held space for the in-betweeners, the ones trying to walk that tightrope like we were between fear and connection. Honestly, just thinking back on that time still makes my heart hurt. My heart hurts for the amount of fear I watched spread through every form of media imaginable. And yes, the virus was new. There were unknown variables. That part is absolutely true. But what I struggled with, and still struggle with, was how quickly common sense and measured caution were replaced with extremes. It felt like burning down an entire house because you found a nest of spiders. One of the main things I struggled with during that time was the narrative of, if you don't think like me, I don't want you in my life. That idea was being passed around like cake at a wedding. That kind of all or nothing thinking leaves no room for nuance. It pits neighbor against neighbor, sister against brother, friend against friend, and before long it turned into an us versus them mentality. I'll leave it to future generations to argue about the politics, the agendas, and the morality of it all. What can't be argued is this: we were all consumed by the same energy, fear. We watched in real time as humanity became saturated with it, and that fear was fueled through our TVs, our computers, our phones, our radios. The very tools meant to inform and entertain us became the biggest pushers of fear. From my perspective, what I witnessed was people becoming so consumed by it that it began to override their intuition. Community was replaced with fear and isolation. Common sense things like getting outside for sunshine and breathing fresh air were replaced with staying inside in the dark, breathing stale, recycled air. Human contact was replaced with screens, masks, and shields. We became afraid to hug one another, and hugs matter. For me and others like me, hugs mean comfort. Hugs mean closeness. They're the silent way of saying, I support you. I have you. You're not alone. Honestly, I'm just one woman sharing my experience and perspective, but I do have to ask, what did it teach us? What are we taking away from that time period? For me, it taught me to get outside more, to be more intentional about what I consume on social media, and to have more compassion for my fellow human beings. I'm trying, and I think that's the best any of us can do. Connectivity shouldn't be 24/7. I know story time may have been heavy for some of you, and if you need to pause before continuing the episode, I completely understand. I'm one of those, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it kind of people. And I'm about to sound old. I already know it. I'm also right now thinking about that stupid meme. Do you remember? Pepperidge Farm remembers. So let's get into this before I need a walker and have to eat dinner at 4 o'clock. I remember a time when we weren't connected 24/7. And what I remember most about that time is freedom. Not surface level freedom, deep in your spirit freedom. People lived their lives without worry about who might be calling or what was happening across the country or the world in that exact moment. They just lived. I remember taking weekend trips with my mom, going to camp in the summer, being out in the country, not connected to anything but nature. And honestly, I really want that freedom back. Most of the time, the only moments I feel that kind of freedom are when we're out in the bush and there's no cell phone reception. Even if it's just for an hour or two, you can feel the energy clear. Your nervous system settles. Your breath even changes. So, what is this drain? Why do we feel the need to be so connected all the time? The answers to that question are varied, but one of the biggest factors is social conditioning. The slow, constant training that tells us we need to be connected 24/7. Think about the commercials we see and hear all the time. Some are subtle, others not so much, helping you stay connected to the world. The internet connects you to everything. The world is getting smaller every day thanks to this technology. And my personal favorite, technology you can count on. They all carry the same underlying message. If you're not connected, you're missing out. And when that message is repeated often enough, it stops sounding like advertising and starts feeling and sounding like the truth. This constant bombardment of stay connected or you're missing out creates anxiety because our bodies and nervous systems never get a chance to fully relax. We're literally conditioning ourselves to stay in survival mode. And that's why it feels so uncomfortable and even unsettling when we're not connected. The silence feels wrong, not because it is, but because we've been trained to associate constant input with safety. And that conditioning doesn't just live in advertisements. It shows up in how people expect access to us. Entitlement access. I know we throw around the word entitlement a lot these days. So let's ground it for a second. Entitlement is the belief that one is inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment. Now, with that definition in mind, think about how many times you felt someone else felt entitled to your energy through the phone, social media, or even in person. The belief that whatever they need in that moment is more important than you. Before cell phones, if you wanted to talk to someone, you called them. If they didn't answer, you left a message. Back when answering machines were a thing. And before that, if they weren't home, you waited. Today, people text, email, DM, and often expect immediate responses. And I'll be honest, I do it too. We all do. We've stopped practicing the virtue of patience. And it doesn't just show up in friends and family. This is large-scale cultural instant gratification. Think about how quickly we're informed when something happens. Often with half the information missing or still unknown. We form opinions and judgments in real time based on incomplete data and then feel entitled to the entire story immediately. But that's not how reality works, especially when it comes to news and complex events. Sometimes it takes days or even weeks to have all the facts. But once people's minds are made up from incomplete data and information, they often stay made up, even when more information becomes available. This kind of entitlement is making us more rigid, more inflexible in our thinking. It feels like we're no longer communicating at the same level. As a society, we're slowly losing one of our greatest gifts, real, compassionate communication. Digital boundaries and you. So, how do we hold our boundaries in a world where everything is moving fast and it feels like if we aren't constantly connected, we're missing out? Honestly, we opt out. We opt out of the idea that everything deserves our immediate attention. We take our time deciding who, what, when, and where gets access to our energy. And I know, you have deadlines, you have work, you have family, you feel like you need to stay up to date on everything. I get it. But do you really? Is the world actually going to fall apart if you don't answer that text until you finish the task you're working on? Is the world going to collapse if you tell a friend you don't have enough information yet to form an opinion on the latest hot topic? Is everything going to burn down because you turned your phone off for the weekend so you can visit a friend you haven't seen in 2 years? The answer to all these questions is no. Listen, I really do get it. Unlearning this kind of conditioning is hard, but taking small, intentional steps can help you manage the digital overload most of us have been living in. One of the simplest places to start is this. For the first 30 minutes after you wake up and the last 30 minutes before you go to bed, turn off your phone. Not silent, off. That space helps you start your day regulated, and it helps you end your day regulated, which makes a real difference when it comes to sleep and overall nervous system health. Another important piece is grounding. And if you're not sure what grounding is or how to do it, I go into that in detail in part 2 of this miniseries, Aura Vampires. Grounding helps bring your energy back into your body instead of leaving it scattered across screens and conversations. When it comes to digital information consumption, whatever that looks like for you, if it causes anxiety, anger, frustration, or even depression, then it's time to put yourself on an information diet. I'm not saying stop listening to the world. I'm saying set a timer. Consume in small, digestible bites. This is about regulation, not shutting the world out completely. Turn your phone off or at least put it on silent when you want to give someone your full, undivided attention. Go out into the bush where there's no cell service, even if it's just for an hour. Disconnect on purpose. And try reading a physical book instead of an e-reader. I'm telling you, it hits different. Digital awareness isn't about rejecting technology. It's about remembering that you get to decide how it fits into your life. Connection shouldn't come at the cost of regulation. Information shouldn't come at the cost of intuition. And access should never come at the cost of your well-being. You don't have to do this perfectly. You just have to do it intentionally. And that is where the real boundary begins. It's time for a Tarot Truth Bomb, where Spirit speaks through the cards, and I don't sugarcoat the message. While I'm shuffling, I want you to ask yourself these couple of questions. Where has constant connectivity replaced my intuition instead of supporting it? What information am I consuming that leaves me feeling fearful, dysregulated, or depleted, and why am I still allowing it? Where have I confused availability with responsibility when it comes to other people's expectations of me? What boundary, if I honored it consistently, would bring my nervous system the most peace right now? And today's card is the King of Cups. The King of Cups sits on his throne in the middle of the ocean, calm while the waves crash around him. That's the energy here. Digital boundaries aren't about cutting yourself off. They're about not letting the tide decide your mood. This card says, you can be emotionally available without being constantly accessible. You don't have to respond to every message, react to every post, or absorb every vibe that floats across your screen. The King of Cups doesn't doom scroll. He doesn't trauma bond in DMs. He doesn't confuse emotional maturity with emotional overexposure. Instead, he chooses when and how he engages. Notifications don't rule him. Algorithms don't poke his nervous system for fun. He knows that just because something pings doesn't mean it deserves his emotional labor. The King of Cups is saying, pause before responding. Feel first, then choose. Protect your emotional waters like they're sacred, because they are. This isn't cold. This is regulated. This isn't avoidance. This is self-respect. You're allowed to be kind and contained. You're allowed to log off to stay whole. You're allowed to keep your crown on, even online. Spirit said what it said. Spirit didn't stutter. Take it in, sit with it, and do what you will with it. All right, now it's time for a Spirit side-eye, because some of y'all are out here playing with energy like karma won't slap you in the back of the head. This side-eye is for that tired old belief that if something is on social media, you need to engage like it's World War III. Sometimes, the most regulated thing you can do is scroll on by. It feels like everything is constantly clamoring for our attention, and somewhere along the way, we started believing it's our job to police the world. Your friend likes to stir the pot, and suddenly you feel pulled in because you think you need to defend them? Nope. Not my monkeys, not my circus. Or that mutual friend of a friend who loves to play the victim when people are simply calling out their behavior? Not today, Satan, not today. Here's the thing. We do not have to engage in anything that causes us anxiety, anger, or frustration. And a lot of people know exactly what they're doing. Some posts are designed as pure clickbait meant to hook you emotionally. So let them. Scroll on by. Let everyone else take the bait. That was your spirit side eye. Now go sage your space and mind your magical business. We don't heal by staying constantly plugged in. We heal by remembering how to come back to ourselves. Digital awareness isn't about rejecting the world. It's about choosing when and how you engage with it. It's about honoring your intuition, protecting your nervous system, and understanding that not everything deserves your attention. You don't owe anyone instant access. You don't need to consume everything to be informed. And you don't have to engage with what pulls you out of peace. Sometimes the most powerful boundary is the quiet one. The pause, the scroll past, the moment you choose regulation over reaction. That's not avoidance. That's wisdom. That's it for today's brew. If something stirred your soul, stirred your sass, or made you side-eye your life choices in the best way possible, pass it on. And don't forget to follow, rate, and share your thoughts on any of our socials. I hope you've enjoyed this mini-series on energy vampires and leaks. This series has been about noticing where our energy is being drained, how it's happening, and what it actually costs us emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Next episode, we're shifting the focus. In the next episode, we'll be talking about living with an invisible illness. In Storytime with CQ, Life with an Invisible Illness, I'll be sharing what it's like to move through the world with something people can't see, and how that invisibility shapes understanding, expectations, and capacity. That episode will air on February the 17th because in the next few days, I'll be doing exactly what we've been talking about in this episode, practicing what I preach. I'll be unplugging for a weekend away with some beautiful souls, stepping back from the noise and honoring rest, regulation, and real connection. Because boundaries aren't just something we talk about, they're something we live. Until next time, this ain't just talk. This is Spirit Gumbo with CQ.